Tonight, the mansion whispers, and I, a governess, follow its echoes through corridors that hold the future of the children in my care. Feel the weight of ancient books in your hands, the scent of worn leather mingling with the aroma of beeswax candles, the gentle sound of pages that guard all the wisdom of the world. If this diary touches your heart, join us again and whisper from where you listen to us, perhaps remembering your own childhood, the teachers who shaped your dreams. Now, lie down, breathe in the aroma of books and wisdom. Let us walk together through a world of whispered knowledge and carefully cultivated dreams. The oil lamp flickers as I open the door to the children's room, its flames casting dancing shadows that seem to embrace the small sleeping faces. It is nearly midnight, but my work as a governess never truly ends. Each gentle breath I hear is a reminder of the future I help shape, page by page, lesson by lesson. I walk slowly between the beds, my leather shoes making the softest sound against the oak floorboards. Lady Margaret, only 8 years old, has golden hair spread across her pillow like captured sunbeams in the night. Beside her, Master Edward, 10 years old, furrows his brow slightly, even in sleep. He has always been the most inquisitive, the one who challenges every lesson with a curiosity that reminds me of myself at his age. The room still carries the aroma of this afternoon's lessons, slate chalk, fresh ink, and that unique scent that only books possess, a mixture of aged paper, worked leather, and unrealized dreams. On the table near the window, my teaching materials await, organized, the polished wooden ruler, carefully rolled maps, and a stack of exercises I must correct before the sun rises again. London in 1870 is a city of contrasts, and this mansion in Belgravia perfectly reflects that duality. While outside the factories expel smoke and workers toil late into the night, here inside I cultivate minds that may one day change the world. It is a responsibility I feel like a gentle but constant weight upon my shoulders. I observe the soft movement of each child's chest rising and falling, and I wonder what dreams visit their young minds. Does Lady Margaret dream of the princesses from the stories I told today? Or perhaps Master Edward is solving the mathematics problems we left unfinished? I smile discreetly, thinking of how their personalities already show themselves so distinctly, even at this tender age. The yellowish light from the oil lamp creates an atmosphere of intimacy and protection. This is my nocturnal kingdom, where I am guardian not only of sleeping bodies, but also of minds in formation. Each book in this room is a door to unexplored worlds, each lesson a seed planted in fertile soil. I sit in the high-backed chair near the writing desk, feeling the fabric of my brown dress, simple but dignified, adjust to my tired body. There is something deeply satisfying in observing the result of a day well dedicated to teaching. The slates show honest attempts, the books are marked in the right places, and the children sleep with that peace that only comes after well-exercised minds. The silence of the house wraps around us like a protective blanket. Somewhere below, I can hear the faint sound of Mr. Harrison, the butler, making his final rounds, checking locks and extinguishing unnecessary candles. The household rhythm continues even in sleep, each servant playing their part in maintaining this sanctuary of learning and growth. I rise silently and walk to the bookshelf that dominates an entire wall of the study room. My fingers glide along the leather spines, each one telling a different story. Not just the stories written on their pages, but the stories of all the students who have handled them before Lady Margaret and Master Edward came into my hands. Parker's first reading book has edges worn from constant use. I remember when I received it 5 years ago, fresh from the publisher. Now its pages know the fingers of dozens of children, each leaving their invisible mark. A folded page here, an ink stain there. The gentle perfume left by small hands still discovering the world through touch. I carefully withdraw the volume of elementary arithmetic and feel its familiar weight in my hands. Tomorrow we will work on divisions, a concept that always challenges Master Edward. He has the tendency to transform numbers into small adventures. If we have 12 apples and 4 children, why can't we simply eat them all together? He asked yesterday, making me laugh despite the seriousness of the lesson. The scent emanating from the books is like a complex perfume that has developed over the years. Paper that has gradually yellowed under London light filtered through windows, leather that has absorbed the moisture of harsh winters and the dry heat of summers near the fireplace, ink that has permanently fixed itself to pages carrying not just words, but the very essence of knowledge. I open the geography book and feel a light breeze from the partially opened window make the pages whisper like autumn leaves. The map of the British Empire unfolds before my eyes, with its vast extensions colored in pink. Yesterday, Lady Margaret traced the route to India with her small finger, asking if the children there learned the same lessons as she does. The preparation for tomorrow's lessons requires careful consideration. Each child learns differently. Lady Margaret absorbs information like a delicate sponge, while Master Edward needs to understand the why behind every concept before accepting it. I select 3 books: Moral Tales for Young Minds, Natural Philosophy for Children, and English Grammar Simplified. As I arrange the materials on the small table, I notice how the lamplight catches the gold lettering on the book spines. These volumes represent more than education. They are bridges between the innocence of childhood and the complexity of the adult world that awaits these young souls. Each page I will turn tomorrow is a step in that sacred journey. The house creaks gently around us, the wooden beams settling after a day of London heat. Through the window, I can see the gaslight from the street casting a warm glow on the garden below. The roses Mrs. Whitmore tends so carefully appear as dark silhouettes against the lighter darkness of the night sky. I pause to touch the leather binding of Tales from Shakespeare for young readers. Tomorrow, I plan to introduce Lady Margaret to the story of Miranda from The Tempest, a young woman who, like her, lives in a protected world but dreams of greater adventures. The parallel seems fitting for a child whose imagination soars far beyond the confines of this nursery. I bring the book closer to my face and inhale deeply, allowing the scent of aged paper and leather to fill my senses completely. There is something almost sacred about this aroma. It speaks of generations of knowledge passed from hand to hand, mind to heart. The smell is complex, layered, like a fine wine. The earthiness of leather that has absorbed decades of London's damp air. The sweet mustiness of paper that has yellowed gracefully with time. And underneath it all, a hint of the linseed oil once used to preserve the bindings. Each book in my collection carries its own distinct fragrance. The newer volumes still retain a crispness, a sharpness that gradually softens with handling. But the older ones, like this copy of Pilgrim's Progress that belonged to my predecessor, Miss Thornfield, have developed that deep, rich scent that speaks of countless readings, countless young minds enlightened by their wisdom. I run my fingers along the textured spine, feeling the slight roughness where years of handling have worn the leather smooth in some places, raised in others. The gold lettering has faded to a warm bronze, and I trace each letter with my fingertip, wondering about all the other governesses who have done exactly what I am doing now, preparing lessons in the quiet hours when their charges sleep peacefully. The leather itself tells a story of craftsmanship from an era when books were treasures, not mere commodities. I can feel the slight variations in texture where the bookbinder's tools created patterns and impressions. These are not the mass-produced volumes that are becoming more common. These are books created with intention, with care, with the understanding that they would be companions to young minds for years to come. Opening the cover, I am greeted by that distinctive sound, the gentle whisper of aged paper, the soft creak of binding that has been flexed thousands of times, but remains strong. The end papers, marbled in blue and gold, show the faint foxing that comes with age, like gentle freckles on the face of a beloved friend. Lady Margaret once asked me why old books smell different from new ones, and I found myself explaining that books, like people, develop character with age. They absorb the environments they live in, the fires that warmed the rooms where they were read, the tears that fell on their pages during particularly moving passages, the laughter that echoed around them during amusing tales. The scent is particularly strong tonight, perhaps because of the dampness in the air that often precedes London's autumn rains. It mingles with the other aromas in the room. The beeswax from the candles I used earlier for additional light, the lavender sachets Mrs. Patterson places in the children's drawers, and the faint trace of coal smoke that perpetually lingers in London air. As I prepare to select tomorrow's reading material, I find myself grateful for this sensory ritual. In a world that often feels hurried and changing, with the new railway extensions bringing more noise and bustle to our quiet neighborhood, these books represent constancy, tradition, and the timeless value of learning. The flame of the oil lamp dances as I adjust the wick, casting wavering shadows across the arithmetic problems I've prepared for tomorrow's lesson. Numbers seem to come alive in this flickering light, the careful curves of eights transforming into tiny dancers, the straight lines of ones standing at attention like little soldiers in formation. Master Edward struggles with long division, and I've learned that he comprehends better when numbers tell stories. Tomorrow's lesson will involve the fictional bakery we've created together, Mr. Pemberton's establishment, where 48 fresh loaves must be divided equally among 6 neighborhood families. The boy's eyes always brighten when mathematics serves a purpose he can visualize. I dip my pen in the inkwell, the metal nib making the softest scratch against the paper as I write out additional practice problems. The sound is rhythmic, almost hypnotic in the quiet of the night. Scratch, pause, scratch. Each mark creating pathways for young minds to follow toward understanding. The lamplight catches the brass fittings of my writing case, a gift from my previous position with the Ashworth family. Lady Ashworth had been particularly generous when I left their service to come here, understanding that a governess's tools are as important as any craftsman's. Inside the case, my collection of pens rest in their felt-lined compartments, each chosen for different purposes. Fine nibs for delicate work, broader ones for clear examples on the children's slates. Lady Margaret excels at arithmetic, her neat figures marching across the slate with precision that would make a bookkeeper proud. She has inherited her mother's methodical nature, approaching each problem with careful consideration before putting pencil to slate. Yesterday, she solved a particularly challenging word problem involving the distribution of afternoon tea cakes, her satisfaction evident in the small smile that graced her lips when she arrived at the correct answer. The arithmetic book lies open to the chapter on fractions, a concept that initially puzzled both children. I remember the afternoon when understanding finally dawned in Master Edward's eyes. We had been discussing his mother's rose garden, and I explained how each section represented a fraction of the whole. Half the garden for red roses, 1/4 for white, 1/4 for yellow. Suddenly, the abstract became concrete. The numbers gained meaning. My own childhood mathematics lessons come flooding back as I work by lamplight. Sister Catherine at the school where I was educated had possessed infinite patience, never showing frustration when I struggled with concepts that seemed to elude my young mind. Now I find myself employing her same gentle persistence, understanding that mathematics is not merely about numbers, but about training the mind to think logically and solve problems systematically. The clock in the hallway chimes once, midnight. Time moves differently in these quiet hours when the house sleeps and I prepare tomorrow's lessons. Each carefully crafted problem represents not just an exercise, but a building block in the foundation of these children's education. In 20 years, when Lady Margaret manages her household accounts or Master Edward calculates business profits, they may remember these late-night preparations, these numbers dancing in lamplight. I close the arithmetic book and reach for Tales from Many Lands, its burgundy cover worn smooth from countless bedtime stories. This is my favorite time of the teaching day, when formal lessons give way to the magic of storytelling, when young imaginations soar beyond the confines of our London drawing room to distant kingdoms and mythical lands. Tonight, as I prepare tomorrow's story selections, I can almost hear the children's voices asking their inevitable questions. Miss Caroline, is it true that dragons once lived in Wales? Or do you think Cinderella ever visited London? Their wonderment never fails to remind me why I chose this profession. Not merely to fill young minds with facts, but to nurture their sense of wonder and possibility. The book falls open naturally to The Fisherman and His Wife, a tale that never fails to spark discussion about contentment and ambition. Lady Margaret always identifies with the fisherman's wife, while Master Edward sympathizes with the magical fish. Their different perspectives create delightful debates that stretch far beyond the story's simple moral, touching on questions of justice, desire, and the consequences of our choices. I trace my finger along the illustrations, woodcut engravings that show such attention to detail. The artist has captured not just the physical elements of each scene, but somehow managed to convey emotion through the carved lines. The fisherman's increasingly worried expression, the wife's growing discontent, the sea that grows more turbulent with each wish, all told through careful observation of human nature. The tradition of bedtime stories in this household extends beyond mere entertainment. Lady Pemberton, the children's mother, has specifically requested that I choose tales that gently instruct while they delight. She believes, as do I, that stories lodged in young hearts often teach more effectively than any formal lesson. The child who learns honesty through Aesop's fables carries that lesson differently than one who memorizes rules from a moral instruction book. I select 3 stories for tomorrow, one familiar favorite to comfort, one new tale to intrigue, and one that connects to our geography lesson about India. The Elephant's Child by Mr. Rudyard Kipling has just been published, and though some might consider it too modern for proper children's literature, I find its rhythm and wordplay irresistible. The children will delight in the great gray-green, greasy Limpopo River. As I mark the pages with thin silk ribbons, I imagine tomorrow's storytelling session. Lady Margaret will curl up in the window seat, her china doll Charlotte arranged carefully beside her. Master Edward will sprawl on the carpet, inevitably interrupting to predict plot developments or to request clarification about unfamiliar words. These interruptions, far from annoying me, demonstrate their engagement with the narrative. The art of storytelling requires different skills than teaching arithmetic or grammar. My voice must become an instrument, rising and falling with the tale's emotions, pausing for dramatic effect, speeding up during exciting chases, slowing down to build suspense. I practice silently, my lips forming the words I'll speak tomorrow, my hands gesturing to accompany the invisible narrative. I set down the storybook and turn my attention to the sleeping children, studying their peaceful faces with the careful observation that has become second nature to me after years of working with young minds. In sleep, their personalities reveal themselves in ways that daylight often conceals. Lady Margaret's determined little jaw relaxes into gentle curves, while Master Edward's habitually furrowed brow smooths into serene acceptance. What dreams dance behind those closed eyelids? Do mathematical problems transform into grand adventures in their sleeping minds? Perhaps Lady Margaret dreams of being the brave princess from this afternoon's French lesson, conversing fluently with imaginary courtiers in perfectly pronounced vowels. Or maybe Master Edward's dreams feature the steam locomotive from our science discussion, carrying him to far-off lands where his endless questions find ready answers. I've learned to read the subtle signs of my students' inner lives through years of patient observation. The way Lady Margaret unconsciously arranges her slate pencils in perfect rows tells me of her need for order and control. Master Edward's habit of dismantling and reassembling his toy soldiers reveals an inquiring mind that seeks to understand how things work, sometimes at the expense of their original purpose. Their sleep patterns, too, have become familiar to me. Lady Margaret sleeps as she does everything else, properly, quietly, with minimal disturbance to her surroundings. Her breathing remains steady and soft throughout the night. Master Edward, however, dreams actively, sometimes murmuring fragments of the day's lessons or turning restlessly as his mind processes new information. I wonder if they dream in the languages we study together. This morning, during our French pronunciation exercise, Lady Margaret surprised me by rolling her R's with natural ease, while Master Edward struggled with the nasal vowels that seemed to slip away from English tongues. Do their dreams offer them fluency that conscious effort cannot achieve? The geography lesson about the Amazon River clearly captured both their imaginations. Lady Margaret asked if the jungle flowers smell sweeter than her mother's roses, while Master Edward wanted to know if the native children learn the same mathematics as he does. Tonight, perhaps their dreams carry them along that distant waterway, exploring territories that exist beyond the reach of our London schoolroom, but within the limitless boundaries of imagination. There's a particular innocence in their sleeping faces that reminds me of my responsibility as their guide through the complex territories of knowledge and character. Each lesson I teach, each story I tell, each gentle correction I offer becomes part of the foundation upon which they'll build their adult lives. The thought both humbles and inspires me. Lady Margaret stirs slightly, her hand moving to adjust the position of her favorite doll. Even in sleep, she maintains that nurturing instinct that makes her such a delightful student. She approaches learning with the same careful attention she gives to caring for her toys, treating each new piece of information as something precious to be properly tended. The moonlight filtering through the gauze curtains creates patterns on their faces, shifting shadows that seem to illustrate the very dreams I imagine them having. In this quiet moment, I feel the profound privilege of being entrusted with these developing minds, these innocent souls who trust me to guide them safely through the vast landscape of human knowledge. I return to my writing desk and light a second candle to provide additional illumination for the task ahead. The stack of slates and copybooks await my attention, each one representing hours of effort from small hands still learning to control pencils and pens. The candlelight casts a warm, steady glow across the pages, creating an intimate workspace in the larger darkness of the sleeping house. I return to my writing desk and light a second candle to provide additional illumination for the task ahead. The stack of slates and copybooks await my attention, each one representing hours of effort from small hands still learning to control pencils and pens. The candlelight casts a warm, steady glow across the pages, creating an intimate workspace in the larger darkness of the sleeping house. Master Edward's arithmetic exercises reveal his characteristic approach to learning. Bold strokes that sometimes sacrifice precision for confidence, occasional erasures where second thoughts overtook initial impulses, and margin notes that show his mind wandering to applications beyond the immediate problem. His calculations are generally correct, but his handwriting tells the story of a boy more interested in reaching answers than in perfecting presentation. I take up my red ink pen, using it sparingly to mark corrections. Too much red can discourage a young student, while too little fails to provide adequate guidance. Each mark must balance instruction with encouragement. Beside his division problem about the bakery, I write, "Excellent reasoning, Edward. Watch your carrying in the final step." Lady Margaret's work presents different challenges and rewards. Her handwriting flows with the careful precision of someone who takes pride in appearance as well as accuracy. Every letter is formed according to the copybook models we study together, every number aligned properly in its column. Yet sometimes I detect a hesitancy in her work, an over-caution that suggests she fears making mistakes more than she delights in discovery. The French vocabulary exercises show particular promise. Both children are developing good pronunciation, though they approach the language differently. Lady Margaret memorizes conscientiously, building a solid foundation of properly learned phrases. Master Edward experiments more freely, sometimes creating amusing combinations that reveal his understanding of grammatical patterns even when his vocabulary proves insufficient. I pause at Lady Margaret's essay about her favorite season. She has chosen autumn, describing the colors of leaves with poetic sensitivity that surprises me. The maple tree outside my window wears a dress of gold and scarlet, she has written, and when the wind blows, it rustles like Mama's silk gown. Such observations suggest an artistic sensibility that formal lessons alone cannot teach. The correction process requires different approaches for each child. For Master Edward, I focus on praising creative thinking while gently guiding him toward greater accuracy. For Lady Margaret, I try to encourage more adventurous expression while acknowledging her careful preparation. Both need to understand that learning involves risk-taking, that mistakes are stepping stones rather than failures. My own penmanship flows smoothly across their pages. Years of practice have given me the ability to write clearly, even by candlelight. I've developed a system of symbols and abbreviations that allow me to provide detailed feedback efficiently. Small check marks for correct work, gentle question marks beside answers that need reconsideration, and occasional longer comments that address both academic content and character development. The clock strikes 1 as I complete the last copybook. 3 hours of concentrated work have transformed a stack of student efforts into a collection of guided learning experiences. Tomorrow, when I return these corrected exercises, each child will receive not just marked papers, but evidence of my investment in their progress, my attention to their individual needs, and my confidence in their ability to grow. Setting down my red pen, I lean back in the chair and allow my thoughts to drift to my own childhood, to the governess who shaped my young mind with the same careful attention I now give to Lady Margaret and Master Edward. Miss Hartwell had possessed that rare combination of firm discipline and gentle encouragement that I strive to emulate in my own teaching. I was 9 years old when Miss Hartwell arrived at Meadowbrook, my family's modest estate in Devonshire. Like Lady Margaret, I had been somewhat timid in my approach to learning, more concerned with avoiding mistakes than with embracing discovery. Miss Hartwell recognized this tendency and gradually coaxed me toward greater confidence through patient encouragement and carefully chosen challenges. She had a particular gift for making every subject come alive through stories and connections. Mathematics became the language of merchants and explorers. Geography transformed into tales of distant adventures. And literature opened windows into the hearts and minds of people across centuries. Under her guidance, learning ceased to be a series of requirements and became instead a thrilling exploration of human knowledge and possibility. The memory that stays with me most clearly occurred during a particularly difficult Latin lesson. I had struggled with conjugations for weeks, growing increasingly frustrated with my inability to master what seemed like arbitrary rules. Miss Hartwell sat beside me that afternoon and explained how Latin words were like seeds that had grown into the English words we used daily. Suddenly, the ancient language became not a dead collection of rules, but a living ancestor of our own speech. My own transformation from reluctant student to eager learner happened gradually, almost without my noticing. One day, I realized I was asking questions not because they were required, but because I genuinely wanted to understand. Miss Hartwell had somehow shifted my perspective from seeing education as something done to me to understanding it as something I could actively pursue. When I announced my intention to become a governess myself, Miss Hartwell spent our final months together sharing the wisdom she had accumulated through years of teaching. She taught me to observe children carefully, to adapt lessons to individual learning styles, and most importantly, to remember that every child carries within them unique gifts waiting to be discovered and nurtured. A good governess, she told me, teaches not just subjects, but teaches children how to think, how to question, how to find joy in learning. The facts they memorize may fade, but the love of knowledge you kindle will burn throughout their lives. Thou, sitting in this London nursery at 1:30 in the morning, I feel the weight of that responsibility. Miss Hartwell's influence extends through me to Lady Margaret and Master Edward, and through them, perhaps, to future generations. Each gentle correction I offer, each encouraging word I speak, each moment of patience I demonstrate, continues the chain of influence that began in that Devonshire schoolroom so many years ago. I wonder what dreams Miss Hartwell would have had for these children. Would she have encouraged Lady Margaret's artistic sensibilities with special art lessons? Would she have channeled Master Edward's boundless curiosity into scientific experiments? The questions comfort me, suggesting that her wisdom continues to guide my decisions even in her absence. The weight of molding young minds presses gently but persistently upon my shoulders as I organize tomorrow's lesson materials. Each decision I make, which book to emphasize, which concept to introduce, which correction to offer, carries consequences that will ripple through these children's lives in ways I may never fully understand. Lady Margaret, at 8 years old, already shows signs of the woman she will become. Her careful attention to detail, her natural empathy for others, and her growing appreciation for beauty suggest she may one day manage a grand household, or perhaps even write poetry. How can I best prepare her for a future I can only imagine? What lessons will serve her most faithfully when she faces challenges I cannot foresee? Master Edward presents different considerations. His quick mind and endless curiosity mark him as a potential scholar or perhaps an inventor. How can I best prepare her for a future I can only imagine? What lessons will serve her most faithfully when she faces challenges I cannot foresee? Master Edward presents different considerations. His quick mind and endless curiosity mark him as a potential scholar or perhaps an inventor. The new industrial age offers opportunities that didn't exist when I was his age. Railways expanding across continents, telegraph lines connecting distant cities, steam engines revolutionizing manufacturing. His education must prepare him for a world that changes more rapidly than ever before in human history. The responsibility extends beyond academic instruction to character formation. These children will inherit positions of privilege and influence in society. The way they treat servants, manage resources, and respond to those less fortunate will affect countless lives. Every interaction we have together offers opportunities to model kindness, justice, and responsibility. I think of the conversations we've had about the poor children we occasionally see on London streets. Lady Margaret's instinctive compassion wars with the social expectations that keep her properly distanced from such harsh realities. Master Edward's logical mind seeks to understand systems that create such inequalities. How do I nurture their natural sympathies while preparing them for their expected roles in society? The burden feels particularly heavy during these quiet midnight hours when the house sleeps and I alone remain conscious of all the possibilities, both wonderful and terrible, that the future might hold for my charges. Will Lady Margaret find happiness in marriage, or will changing times offer her opportunities for independence that previous generations of women never enjoyed? Will Master Edward use his intelligence for personal gain, or will he contribute to making the world more just and prosperous for everyone? Sometimes I wonder if I am adequate to this enormous responsibility. My own education, though solid, was limited by the expectations placed upon women of my generation. I teach from textbooks that may already contain outdated information, using methods that may not be the most effective for these particular children. Yet I must proceed with confidence, knowing that my uncertainty would only undermine the children's trust in the learning process. The parents trust me to make countless daily decisions about their children's development. Lady Pemberton rarely questions my methods, allowing me considerable autonomy in designing curricula and managing discipline. This freedom is both liberating and daunting. I have the power to shape these young lives according to my best judgment, but I also bear full responsibility for the consequences of my choices. Perhaps the greatest challenge lies in preparing these children for a world that will inevitably differ from the one I know. The values I teach them must be timeless enough to remain relevant, yet flexible enough to adapt to changing circumstances. As the night deepens toward 2 o'clock, I begin the familiar ritual of returning each book to its proper place on the shelves. There is something deeply satisfying about this process, each volume finding its way home after another day of service, ready to offer its wisdom again when called upon. My fingers trail along the spines as I shelve them. Elementary arithmetic beside advanced mathematical concepts. English grammar next to rhetoric and composition. Tales from many lands joining its companion volumes of world literature. Each book has earned its place through proven usefulness, through the countless lessons it has supported, through the young minds it has helped to illuminate. The leather binding of Natural Philosophy for Young Minds shows particular wear near the chapters on magnetism and electricity, subjects that never fail to fascinate Master Edward. Lady Margaret has left careful pencil marks in her copy of Moral Tales for Young Ladies, noting passages that particularly moved her. These traces of student engagement are as precious to me as any formal assessment of their progress. I pause at the geography section, remembering today's lesson about the Australian continent. Both children were amazed to learn about seasons that occur at opposite times from our London calendar, about animals that hop instead of walk, about landscapes so different from anything they've experienced. Their wonder reminds me why I chose these particular volumes, not just for their factual accuracy, but for their ability to expand young imaginations. The process of shelving books creates its own meditation. Each volume carries memories, successful lessons that brought understanding to confused faces, difficult afternoons when concepts refused to clarify, moments of breakthrough when abstract ideas suddenly became concrete and meaningful. These books are not merely teaching tools, but companions in the sacred work of education. I arrange tomorrow's selections on the reading table, 3 books that will guide us through morning lessons, afternoon explorations, and evening stories. The anticipation of tomorrow's discoveries fills me with quiet satisfaction. What questions will the children ask? What connections will they make between today's knowledge and new information? The arithmetic book opens naturally to the fraction chapter we've been studying. I can almost see Master Edward's face lighting up when he finally understood that 4 quarters make 1 whole, the moment when mathematical abstraction became concrete reality. These breakthrough moments make all the patient repetition and gentle correction worthwhile. Lady Margaret's favorite volume of poetry shows evidence of frequent handling. She has developed a particular fondness for Christina Rossetti's verses, often requesting them during our literature time. Yesterday she surprised me by reciting Remember from memory, her young voice carrying emotion that suggested deeper understanding than I had expected. The shelving complete, I stand back to survey my small library. These volumes represent more than accumulated knowledge. They embody the hope that education can transform lives, that careful instruction can develop character along with intellect, that today's lessons can prepare young minds for tomorrow's challenges. Each book stands ready for tomorrow's service, its wisdom available to guide 2 young lives 1 step further along their educational journey. In a few hours, when morning light streams through these windows, Lady Margaret and Master Edward will return to this room, their minds fresh and ready for new discoveries. Until then, these faithful volumes keep watch, guardians of the knowledge that will shape the future. I extinguish the extra candle and carry my oil lamp back to the children's bedroom for one final check before retiring to my own small quarters. The soft circle of light precedes me down the hallway, casting familiar shadows that have become as much a part of my nightly routine as the lessons themselves. Lady Margaret has shifted slightly in her sleep, one small hand now resting protectively over her favorite doll, Charlotte. The doll, with its porcelain face and carefully arranged blonde curls, seems to watch over its young mistress with the same devotion I feel toward both children. Lady Margaret has been teaching Charlotte to read lately, holding patient lessons where she repeats the day's phonics instruction in a whisper that barely reaches my ears. Master Edward has managed to kick off his coverlet despite the cool October night. I approach quietly and draw the wool blanket back over his shoulders, marveling at how different he appears in sleep. Peaceful where he is usually energetic, still where he normally fidgets with boundless curiosity. His dreams must be populated with the steam engines and telegraph systems that fascinate him during waking hours. The steady rhythm of their breathing creates a gentle symphony that speaks of health, safety, and the deep rest that comes to children whose days have been filled with purposeful activity. Each breath represents another moment of growth, another step toward the adults they will someday become. In sleep, they process the day's lessons, consolidating new knowledge into the growing framework of their understanding. I offer a silent prayer for their continued well-being, for wisdom in guiding their development, for patience during difficult lessons, and for the ability to recognize and nurture their individual gifts. These children have been entrusted to my care, not just for their intellectual development, but for the formation of their characters, their values, their understanding of their place in the world. The moonlight filtering through the gauze curtains has shifted as the night progressed, now casting different patterns across their peaceful faces. Lady Margaret's features show the delicate bone structure she has inherited from her mother, while Master Edward displays the stronger jawline characteristic of the Pemberton men. Yet both faces reflect the innocence and possibility that working with children such a profound privilege. Tomorrow will bring new challenges and discoveries. Lady Margaret will struggle with French pronunciation while excelling in watercolor technique. Master Edward will grasp mathematical concepts quickly but require patience with penmanship practice. Each day offers fresh opportunities to guide, encourage, and inspire these developing minds. I whisper a gentle goodnight, though they cannot hear me. The words are as much for my own peace of mind as for their dreams, a ritual that marks the end of one day's teaching and the preparation for tomorrow's possibilities. Their dreams float peacefully around them like invisible guardian angels, carrying the day's lessons into the deeper realms of memory and understanding. What adventures await them in those sleeping minds? What problems will they solve? What discoveries will they make in the limitless territories of imagination? As I turn to leave, I take one last look at these two young souls whose education has become my life's work, my daily joy, and my most important responsibility. I carry the lamp to my own modest room, its flame growing smaller and more precious in the deepening night. The house around us settles into complete stillness. No more creaking floorboards, no distant sounds of servants completing their duties, only the gentle whisper of London wind against window panes and the soft ticking of the hallway clock marking time's steady passage. My small chamber, adjacent to the children's rooms, reflects the simplicity of my position. A narrow bed with clean white linens, a washstand with pitcher and basin, a modest wardrobe containing my few good dresses, and a writing desk where I compose letters to my sister in Devonshire. Yet this space has become precious to me, a sanctuary where I can reflect on each day's successes and challenges, where I can prepare my heart and mind for tomorrow's responsibilities. The lamp's flame wavers as I set it on the bedside table, casting dancing shadows that seem to carry the day's memories. Lady Margaret's delighted laughter when she finally mastered the French pronunciation of papillon. Master Edward's concentrated frown as he worked through a particularly challenging arithmetic problem. The quiet satisfaction in both their faces when they understood new concepts. I change into my white cotton nightgown, feeling the cool fabric settle around me like a gentle embrace. The day's formal governess identity, proper dress, perfect posture, measured words, gives way to the simpler person beneath. Yet even in these private moments, the weight of responsibility remains. Tomorrow's lessons are already taking shape in my mind. Gentle dreams of educational possibilities that will soon merge with actual sleep. The oil lamp's flame reflects in the small mirror above my washstand, creating twin points of light that seem to hold all the warmth of the day's teaching moments. I brush my hair with slow, methodical strokes, 50 each night, as my mother taught me years ago when I was younger than Lady Margaret is now. The routine connects me to my own childhood, reminding me of the continuous chain of learning and growth that links generations. Through the thin wall, I can hear the faint sound of Master Edward's breathing, slightly deeper now as he settles into his most restful sleep. Lady Margaret's room remains perfectly quiet. She sleeps as precisely as she does everything else. These children have become so much a part of my daily existence that even their sleeping sounds provide comfort and reassurance. I kneel beside my bed for evening prayers, my hands folded in the same position I've maintained since childhood. The words come easily in the darkness: gratitude for health and safety, requests for wisdom and patience, hopes for my students' continued growth and happiness. In the lamplight, my shadow appears larger than life against the wall, as if the day's teaching has somehow expanded my very presence. The flame begins to flicker more urgently now, the oil burning low after hours of faithful service. Soon, darkness will claim the room completely, and I will drift into sleep, surrounded by the peaceful breathing of my charges, the gentle settling of the house, and the distant sounds of London continuing its endless rhythm beyond our quiet sanctuary. I extinguish the lamp with a gentle breath, and shadows embrace the room like old friends. In the darkness, my mind releases its careful hold on the day's concerns, allowing sleep to carry me toward dreams where lessons unfold effortlessly, where understanding blooms in young minds like flowers opening to morning sunlight, where the sacred work of education continues in the mysterious territories of rest. The children sleep safely in their beds, their dreams protected by my presence nearby, their minds processing today's knowledge while preparing for tomorrow's discoveries. In a few short hours, dawn will bring new lessons, fresh challenges, and the eternal joy of watching young minds grow and flourish under careful guidance. The house whispers its own lullaby now, creaking timbers, settling foundations, the gentle percussion of autumn rain beginning to tap against windows. These sounds blend into a symphony of safety and continuity, the eternal rhythms that have comforted governesses and children for generations before us, and will continue long after we have become memories ourselves. Sleep comes gradually, carrying with it the satisfaction of work well done, responsibilities faithfully met, and young lives carefully tended. Tomorrow will bring its own rewards and challenges, but tonight belongs to rest, to dreams, to the gentle darkness that restores us all for another day's sacred service in the timeless work of education. The governess's lamp has been extinguished, and in the growing darkness only whispers remain. The soft echo of pages turning, the gentle memory of chalk on slate, the warm scent of leather-bound wisdom settling into silence. Lady Margaret's dreams carry French butterflies dancing through arithmetic gardens, while Master Edward's sleeping mind builds bridges of numbers across rivers of starlight. And in the space between their dreams and waking, knowledge blooms like midnight flowers. The books rest quietly on their shelves, patient guardians of tomorrow's discoveries. Each spine a doorway to worlds waiting to unfold. Each page a stepping stone across the gentle stream of learning that flows eternal, through young minds, through caring hearts, through the endless night of growing wisdom. In the darkness of the London mansion, time moves like honey, thick and golden and sweet, carrying the dreams of children safely toward dawn, where lessons await like faithful friends, ready to whisper new secrets, to plant fresh seeds in the fertile garden of two young souls. The governess sleeps now, her dreams filled with the faces of students past and present, Miss Hartwell's gentle guidance echoing across the years, Lady Margaret's careful penmanship floating through starlit corridors, Master Edward's endless questions transforming into silver butterflies of curiosity. And you, dear dreamer, drift now with us through these halls of learning, where every shadow holds a story, every whisper carries wisdom, every breath draws you deeper into the gentle embrace of education and rest. Sleep well, traveler through time. May your dreams carry the scent of old books and beeswax candles, the sound of gentle correction and patient explanation, the warm satisfaction of young minds growing ever brighter in the eternal, peaceful classroom of the night. Good night, fellow seeker of knowledge. May your dreams be filled with the rustle of turning pages, the scratch of careful penmanship, and the gentle satisfaction of wisdom shared with open hearts.